Okay guys, this video is all about how to solder XT90 connectors. I'm going to try and keep it as simple and to the point as I can. Why do we need to solder some XT90 connectors, guys? Well, I'm fitting this cat pack from JJ Customs to my 8S Armour Infraction. Now guys, when it comes to soldering XT90 connectors, do not think that they come apart like an EC5 connector does. So don't be tempted to go and try and hammer these pins out or anything like that, because it will end very badly. As you may gather from the slight laughter, yours truly has made that error. So learn from my mistakes, guys. Anybody wants me to do a video on soldering the EC5 connectors up, then please shout away in the comment section below the video. Before soldering any connectors like these, you need to make sure the wires are well tinned. Now, you can use your soldering iron for doing these, but if you're doing if you've got any kind of volume of them, I would recommend getting any one of these tinning pots on here. Yours for about 20 bucks from your local electronics store or off of Amazon, enabling you to tin the leads in a matter of seconds. This is one of the best time savers in electronics I've ever bought, because you can do battery leads just as easily as you can make up connector leads. You will note, guys, so when it comes to soldering XT90 connector, guys, you will note this cup is facing upwards, and also this one, when I turn it around, also facing upwards. So we're going to let gravity do the work in terms of putting the solder in there and tinning the bit. Sometimes they come and they're twisted to one side, so you can get a pair of pliers and very gently twist the cups around that way. Now, one other thing is, the pins are in this because it's made of a high temperature like nylon plastic. The EC5 ones will melt if you try and put them, your soldering iron near them. So with the EC5 ones, that is why they come with a separate pin. So you wire the pin up and then you push the connector in. Heating this will melt it. Heating this, fingers crossed, won't. Just remember, guys, if you like what you see today, don't forget to subscribe. Or I would just say, word of warning, guys, if anybody has got one of these on the sides, I would not let any young kids come anywhere near this. Even I am very careful with it because it's obviously full of very hot solder on there. But I'm going to need it in a minute, so I'm keeping it on. Now the XT90 leads, we're going to need to pop through this part of the XT90 connector. Now, you will note, when I'm fitting on here, guys, with it being a cat pack, I'm fitting the wrong half of the connector onto this bit, because that is, I do not want any possibility of accidentally plugging that cat pack in series with a battery, because the cat pack would just blow itself to pieces. So I'm putting the wrong connector on there to stop me connecting it by accident to the wrong part of the car. That's just if it doesn't. That's just in case the more eagle-eyed of you spotted that I was fitting the wrong half of the connector to it. Now with the pins in the right direction, guys, the next bit of thing I'm going to do is pop the other half of the connector together there. That means if there is any excess heat in there and the pins are tempted to move around at all, with holding it in the other half of the connector, the pins shouldn't move anywhere. Just want that finger tight in the vise so it's not moving anywhere. You don't want to put excess pressure on that, guys. Now, I'm just quickly at the same time, guys, going to tin the wires underneath for the other end of the connector. The one thing I would say is short bits of wire in here, for goodness sake, hold them in some pliers, because it gets very, very hot indeed. I can now safely turn that off, and I always disconnect it to be on the safe side. Okay guys, I would say when soldering any XT90 connectors on, or any battery connectors, if you're swapping them over, just do one at a time. Now I know this is a cat pack, but I'm doing this so people get the principle of it, because obviously even the cat pack could have some charge in there, spark the leads together, but a battery is almost certainly going to have some charge in there, so you definitely want to do one connector taped up at a time. So that's why I'm doing it on here today. I don't think there's any charge in this cat pack, but let's play it safe anyway. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is tin both of the connectors. Now we're going to fill them about halfway full on here. Always find with these things it's better to have too much solder in there. Now we're going to turn that round, just give it a second to cool, because we don't want gravity dropping the stuff out the other way. You want it so it's covering pretty much front to back on there. Okay guys, now we're pretty much ready to go. You will note positive marking on one side, negative marking on the other side. The one thing I would suggest to people, the connectors are unmarked. In general, it's the square edged side that's a positive one, because if you look at our EC5 connector as an example, the positive is also on the square side down there. So some commonality between connectors. Now in general, guys, I would say a smaller soldering iron won't work for these connectors. When I was first doing them, I had a much smaller one than this, and they don't get enough heat in the connections. A little bit messy there, Rich. If I'm just blowing on it is enough to cool it. You don't want the thing to cool down too fast, guys, because otherwise the joint can be brittle and then fracture. Now you see why we needed to put that bedded connector on first. Now we should be good to remove our tape. You've got to be very careful at this point, guys, if you're doing it with a battery. Now we're going to do the negative side of the terminal. As I say, if you tried this on an EC5 connector, you would find the blue bit, if you had the pin in there, would simply melt, whereas this XT90, the high temp plastic, fingers crossed, isn't going to melt. You push that down on the top there. Basically, we're getting the two pre-soldered bits to bond together there, guys. Again, just gently blowing on it, and we should be good enough. Now, I always leave them for a few minutes till it's cooled down to finger touch on there, and then do like a wiggle test on the wires. Don't do that to start with while they're still warm, guys, otherwise you can break them loose on there. But do the wiggle test and pull the connector like reasonably hard on there, because you don't want it coming loose on your battery in the field and for goodness sake shorting out against something else or giving you a loss of power, ruining your day when you're out in the field. So come back to that one in a second, guys. Okay, guys, well, the Richie wiggle test, those aren't going anywhere in a hurry. You will note the key thing on here, guys, keeping the leads nice and straight in both directions. You don't want any kind of wiggle out to the side with the leads. Otherwise, when you come to slide this connector back on, it won't necessarily go on properly, nor do you want too much solder. So you want to keep it a little, I could have been maybe a little bit better. Oh no, it's coming clean on there, so that when we push this on, it clips home nice and easily. Learn from my mistakes, guys. The early ones I did of these, I had them like pushed out at an angle on there, and it all looked good, soldered on nice and tightly, and then I couldn't get the dam cover on the end of it. So that's one half done, and by keeping this part of the connector in, the pins have gone nowhere, so it connects perfectly well. Now we're going to do the other half of the XT90 connector, guys, but just a couple of tips along the way. The first thing is, again, to make sure both cups are there so that when you solder in, you let gravity do the work. When you turn it around, the same on the other side. Also, we're going to need to do the same, ideally, with the pin connectors on there, but I do not want the heat soak possibly going back into this capacitor pack, nor might you want it going into your battery pack on there, guys. If you're making, maybe, if it's particularly if you're new to soldering, you don't want to keep that heat on there too long, get too much heat soak going in and damaging things. So I've got a spare lead here, which I'm going to plug in the end, simply battery charging lead, and I'm going to use that to keep my pins in line. Hope that makes sense, guys. Turning out the second connector. As I say, just make sure you're getting the solder going right to the back in there, guys. Decent sized pool of solder we want in there, about half full. A little bit too much there, Richie. See, it's just beginning to drip, guys. Blow on that. As I say, you don't want to turn the thing upside down, all your hard work drip onto the floor. Turn that round. As I say, only finger tighten the vise, you don't want to risk breaking the connector. One of these big Weller soldering irons, 260 watt power, is the kind of thing that you need for doing these bigger leads, guys. I found a small iron that I had to start with. Apologies to my American friends for calling this soldering as opposed to soldering. That's the UK person in me. If anybody wonders about that, guys, in the UK it's called soldering, not soldering. And a little bit too much there again, Rich. I've already pre-tinned my wires. Keep an eye on the positive red wire on that. I had to double check then. Now, guys, when you're soldering on, obviously remember, check positive. It's a positive. A very easy mistake to overlook that, guys. As I say, no need to rush cooling it down. Let nature do its work. Quickly do the negative wire. Bending the wire out of the way so I don't burn my hands. Now you will note, guys, I don't have the end connector attached there. That's because I can slide it on over the ends of the leads. But for goodness sake, make sure if you're doing that to your battery, again, make sure this connector is on first. Again, I'm going to leave that cool down and come and do the Richie pull test just to make sure it's all alright. Quick flex test on there. Those wires aren't going anywhere. All looks good. Fingers crossed, done its job. Snap that down on there. And then I can remove my sacrificial connector. Just use the battery charging lead for that, guys, on there. Anyway, that's the other half of the connector done. Now ready to wire the cat pack up. Anyway, guys, there we have it. That is how to solder or solder XT90 connectors. That is all ready to go now. and be word into my Newcastle XLX ESC and run my cat pack on my ATS armor infraction. So you don't want to miss that video, guys. There's one to be testing the before and after value of what the JJ Customs cat pack adds to the car. Then don't forget to subscribe, and there is a link to this cat pack below the video if anyone wants one. Well, thumbs up if you like this video, guys. Post any comments you might have in the comment section below the video, and hit the circle below to subscribe. And if you do hit the circle, don't forget to hit the bell. Okay, guys, if you'd like your very own cat pack, then don't hesitate to contact JJ Customs down in San Jose. They also sell these cat packs online.